Okay, are we okay?
Okay, with Ashley.
Okay. All right. I think we are set. Let's do a roll call of those people attending so we can determine if we have a quorum or not. Justina,
Present.
Erin,
Present.
okay, Iolani. She will be joining us. She said she might be late. Megan McCorston is not able to be here. Ben Naki,
Here.
May,
Here.
Peter's here. Napua, Mari,
Here.
Carrie. Carrie here? And Melody Vega is absent. Dana Luca. Is there someone else here from DHS? All right, Rochelle.
Here.
Steve Schatz is going to be late. Matt Shim.
Here.
We do have a quorum so that we can proceed to vote on issues that come before us at this meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes as distributed. Is there a motion to approve?
Hi, Bob. This is Faye. I'm in motion to approve the minute.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second, Erin.
Thank you, Erin. Is there any discussion? Take a moment to go through another look at the minutes, and then we'll call for a vote. If there's no discussion. Hearing none, let's move forward with the vote on approval of the October 13th meeting minutes as presented. Justina,
Aye.
Erin,
Aye.
okay, Yolani? Here with us yet? Ben,
Aye.
May,
Aye.
I vote aye. Napua,
Aye.
Mari,
Aye.
Carrie. The minutes have been approved as presented. Thank you, everyone. We move to item number 3 on the agenda, which is public comment, with a reminder that there's a time limit, 2 minutes per speaker, and comments have to be related to agenda items. Is there any public comment at this time in the meeting? Hearing none, we also did not receive any public testimony. We can move to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Act 46-210 Roadmap Draft Report with input from the board. Ben, Naki, and Kekalita are going to help with the facilitation of this portion of the meeting. So Ben, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bob. So before we get started, I just wanted to mahalo all the SI committee members that have we worked pretty hard on this first draft of the roadmap in response to SCR 217. So I just want to mahalo Ka'iolani, Bob, Sherilyn, Alohi, Yuko, Jordana, Lane, Dana, Keiko, Napua, Lauren, and Megan. We worked pretty hard on this, and again, I want to just let you all know, ELB members know that this is just the first draft, right? And it's vital we get feedback from all of you because we know we have to, this is something that we're gonna have to get vote on so we can push it to the legislature in middle to late December. So again, this is just our first draft, and a reminder that we started with no template. And so, you know, we have Lane at our disposal, and he was able to work with us on creating this template that Bob sent out to all the ELB members. And so the way we're gonna run this is, I think we have about 45 minutes, and I'm just gonna do a quick overview, not in detail about the roadmap, more of just kind of orienting you how the roadmap flows, and then I'll take about 5 minutes to do that. And then I'm gonna turn over to Keiko to facilitate any kind of questions, concerns, recommendations that might be on your minds. And then we'll do a quick wrap up as far as what our next steps are, what the timeline we're looking at, and then also how we can get feedback from the public as well too. So the document that was sent to you, let me see if I can. So the organization of the roadmap, it starts off with an executive summary, and the executive summary is kind of outlines the concerns around availability, accessibility, affordability, quality, and also around family choice when it comes to early learning. And then the concerns are then followed by guiding principles that our SI committee felt was important for us to ensure we recognize these guiding principles as we started to develop the different pieces of the roadmap. And then we dive right into the actual roadmap, the draft of the roadmap, which has some background information regarding some data around what is the number of kids we're talking about, as well as the timelines that we have to be at 50% to serve 50% of the children, as well as the timeline for the 100%. And then it also has some data on the number of seats that are available, as well as what is our projection as far as what the need is. And then I'd say the heavy piece is around the 4 critical areas that our SI committee felt was important for us to have in the roadmap as a guide to toward reaching the ultimate goal, which is to ensure, you know, all children have access to preschool, and we're able to do that for 100% of the kids. And so those 4 action item areas, critical areas, the first is around workforce development and support. The second is around facilities. The third is around funding for early care and education mixed delivery system. And we rounded off with program quality improvement and maintenance. And in each of those critical areas, we start off with some key metrics, and then we looked at some of the existing challenges regarding this action item. We talked about next steps, which would be policy proposals and approaches to consider, as well as legislative approaches to consider. And then each section might have a few comments that may have not fit in any of those areas. So each of those action items, we were able to craft a lot of things that are happening now, some of the things that we know needs to happen, and some proposed next steps. And then we have a conclusion just to kind of wrap up the roadmap. And again, I do want to reiterate that this is the first draft. This is not, we're not sending this, we're not voting on this today. What we're really seeking is to get some feedback and input from all of you. Any kind of recommendations, questions, or concerns would be very helpful. So I'll turn it over to Keiko, who I believe is in person there to facilitate the discussions.
Thanks, Ben.
So again, I know not everybody, I think only the board members received a copy of the document. So we know that it's a little bit hard for the public to really get input at this time. But please know that this is really just the first draft. So there are a lot of language issues that we'll still need to clean up. And we are intending for this to be an iterative document. It kind of captures what we have at this time. So I just wanted to make sure if there were any questions. And again, I know it's hard if you don't have a document in front of you, but for the board members, are there any just general questions so far and how it's been presented or laid out?
Anything in the chat? Doesn't appear to be anything. in the
No
chat.
questions, okay, because really what we want to do at this time is if there's any questions, be able to answer, because many of the people who helped write this report are here in the room. But also if there's any concerns that need to be addressed, because I think there's a discrepancy between the numbers of kids that we have here and a document I think that Kamehameha put together. And then just making sure that if there are any concerns or any recommendations you have, so that we can come back with another draft to share prior to your December meeting, because we do have a really crunch timeline in December. I think, Lane, by December 23rd, so you have to submit it to the legislature. 28. So we do have time for, any revisions to this draft, so you'll have time to look at it.
May has a question.
That's all.
May.
May?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I have a question. What are the EC graduate, like what of the number of seats that we're looking at in the roadmap?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, for those of you who have a document, I think there's some data on the number of children that we're talking about, the number 3 and 4-year-olds. So Lane did a good job of looking at the birth records and trying to capture that data there. So based on the birth records data, that's about 32,000 kids, that 3 and 4-year-olds that we're talking about, because every year there's about 16,000 births. So just looking at that numbers for the 3 and 4-year-olds. So there's that number. But then I think if you read through the document, there's also some data that was received from I think it was the Early Childhood Action Strategy and the number of seats. So based on their calculations, again, if you take the number of seats that are already currently filled, this includes the private preschools, as well as the Head Start and charter schools. And within Department of Education, there's the special education and then the EOEL pre-K children. So if you look at that number and you subtract from the number of kids, I think that's how we came up with a 12,000 number of keiki. Is that correctly? Did you want to explain that more?
In the draft at around page 12, if you happen to go back and look, there's the statistics that Keiko mentioned. So
Get the document on the screen. Wayne, can you get the document on the screen?
I'll pull it up.
Okay, I think we ought to screen share at this point so that people
Yeah,
can
I'll
see
share it.
what we're talking about.
Give me a quick minute.
We are the people who are thinking the same thing.
thanks, Ben. So it's at page 12 of the actual roadmap itself.
There we go.
So on page 12, and I think that's page 13, but
Yeah.
page 12 lists or identifies the numbers that were taken from the Department of Health's vital statistics of births. So like Keiko mentioned, it's roughly about 16,000. So if you add each year, so 3s and 4s will be 2 years together. So roughly 32,000. And then if you go to page 13, that information is the estimated number of seats that are available for early learning in the state of Hawaii. And that's pieced together from information taken from ECAS, that they report the private preschool spaces that are collected from Patch information. And then the Head Start, charter schools, DOE, special education, and EOEL pre-K numbers were taken from the state, I think the state information sheet for the preschool yearbook that's generated by NEAR, the National Institute for Early Education Research. So adding all that together, you get roughly for the last set that information is available, which is 22,850. So you subtract 22,850 from 32,000, you get roughly about 10,000. So you're looking at about 10,000 seats or spaces to be filled as unserved currently. So 50% of 10,000 is 5,000 by 2027, and 10,000 for the entirety of the 32,000 is 100% by 2032. So by 2032, there's a need, at least roughly ballpark right now, to increase it by 10,000 seats or spaces.
May, did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Do we want to walk through? Oh, Justina has a comment. Okay, Justina?
I also, if Bob, if you're going to suggest walking through something, I can hold until we're done with that if you want.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Oh.
Yeah, you're too close, I think, maybe. Want to try again, Justina? Your voice was there, it was just muffled and garbled, it wasn't clear. So
Yeah, okay, I changed my audio settings. Better?
that's good.
Okay. I'm okay with waiting if you want to ask to walk through something and could hold my comment, if that makes sense.
She's okay to hold her comment if you want to walk through pieces
Oh,
or.
so your comment is not about this part, it's just one you have in general after we get through?
Yeah, I don't know which piece you were going to walk through so I'm not sure, but it sounds like maybe you were going to ask for some more global walking through of the document.
Does this number include or have a consideration about the COVID effect? Because there are some schools closed. So previously we had lots of seats available, but good portion of it was closed and it's not available. So do we have to have more seats available by that targeted date?
So for the numbers that I took, the last available data sheet generated by ECAS was June 30, 2022. So that information of the 17,978 private spaces is as of June 30. So
Okay, so it's current.
it's as current as it can be for now.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to look at the other numbers as long as we're here? Or would you prefer not to?
Are you talking about the committee and
Yeah.
the numbers? So yeah, there is a little bit of a discrepancy because there's the data that's here in this chart here. And then when you go further into the roadmap, addressing the workforce, there's some other numbers that I think comes from the Kamehameha study. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy.
I think the major discrepancy was with the birth rate data. So if he actually got it from if Lane actually got it from the DHS, then that's probably the most current, because what we did was we looked at the overall Hawaii birth rate and we just multiplied it by 2, and that's how we got the 35,272. And our licensed preschool seats are the same. We use the same data set as well as our public pre-K, EOEO, and charter preschool data. So it's just the birth rate data that's different. But to Mari's comment, it is important to note that we are still at June 2022, we have still 12.5% less seats than pre-COVID. So there is a possibility that we may need more than that 10,000 projected seats that we have with the 17,978.
And Lane, you accounted for some of that, right, by giving a range?
Yes, so one of the interesting things that you can note even by looking at the chart that's embedded at page 12 of the draft is that from 2018 through 2021, the birth rate is steadily declining. And if you were to push back to 2017 and 2016, the numbers are even higher. So it goes from maybe 18 to 17 to 16 to now 15 in 2021. And of course, 2022 is not complete yet. So there's no way of knowing what the actual number is. But that said, a good estimation is if you look at those numbers, it is declining. So what is communicated, at least in the draft, is that the cohort numbers that are represented by that second chart at the bottom of the page is that because the DOE enrolls children on an offset calendar from July through August, of the following year. So there's a slight difference between calendar year and, DOE entrance year. So taking that into account, that's what the second one, the second chart is. So that you'll notice that there's a, an offset by about 500 or 600 kids each year, just because of the ways, that the months kind of break down. So some years you'll see less, some years you might see more, just because depending on how children are born. So if they're born, let's say a significant amount are born in October through December, the following school year or entrance year, we'll see a lot more kids, even though the calendar year will be a little bit less. But that being said, the numbers, and if you care to track back to the ECAS numbers, they do in that report that they put out indicate how much has been lost pre-COVID to post-COVID. So I think the last one that I remember looking at is that they did identify that the amount of seats available are down by 12%,
Yeah,
12 to 17% pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it is also important to note that Lieutenant Governor Yook is using a different set
Yeah.
of numbers right now. So perhaps keeping it consistent across the board in the roadmap, because she takes into consideration that 20% of families will choose to keep their keiki at home.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's the number that we use.
So what I hear you saying is we need to have more discussion around and a definition of the exact number we all agree upon as a subcommittee. We'll bring that back as one recommendation.
Thank you.
We have a comment from Carrie. He said, and we want to compare these numbers for the Blue Sky Consulting to AUH02.
So Carrie from our from the Hawaii Early Intervention Coordinating Council has been asking about the data from, I think Hero has been working on for the Commit to Keiki. So from the Blue Sky report, which I'm not sure if it's publicly available
It's
yet.
not
So
publicly available to my knowledge. It has only been shared with the steering committee of Commit to Keiki at this point.
So I guess that was one of her comments. Is that what it was?
I think so.
Thank you. So it sounds like there's some discrepancy in the numbers of children that we're talking about. So we might want to make sure that we're in alignment. And I think there's other data that I think Center on the Family has been working on as well. So we might want to make sure that we're all talking about the same numbers, or if there is discrepancies, that we understand what it is that we're talking about, because we don't want to have us running amok, and make sure that we're in alignment. So thank you, Dr. Mari. We will make sure that we include that information about the COVID data, and then really taking a look at addressing the different data sets that we have. Because Lane, I think you were pulling from the Early Childhood Action Strategy report and the Kamehameha. I guess there's a question on the birth data.
Just the birth rate data.
Birth rate data.
That's the major discrepancy, which changed the overall number, because we have 35,272, and I think that it was 32
Depending.
On the 3 and 4.
Yes, depending on.
But it goes up to, don't you have a range of
I had a
32 to
range.
34?
Of, in the draft, it's a range of 34,988 to 31,916.
And that we may decide is okay to have that range. So that we acknowledge that it could vary. I think what we want to though say, and Lane, I thought this was incorporated in the report, that we were going to reach for the higher number
Yes.
to just be on the safe side.
Yes, and that is reflected in the facilities chart that is on page 19. Oh, and in the workforce numbers, because that is tied to teachers. So on page 15, in the chart, there is a key metric to achieve as part of that, and it lists 818 new teachers and support staff by 2027, and double that, so 1,636 by 2032, and those, there's a footnote there, which is footnote 15, and that is tied to the same numbers that we're discussing right now. But the one thing to note is that those numbers of 818 and 1636 are stretch numbers, because if you do the math, just based on what's in the draft, in that draft that we were discussing, you won't reach 818 or 1636. You'll probably reach about 600, you know, because you're taking a range of unserved. So it's going to be anywhere between 11,000 and 9,000, 900, 9,500. So if you divide that by the way that the math works is that if you assume a center-based program will serve 20 students per one, teacher and one staff, one staff assistant, then you're gonna, just do the simple division of divide 20 by, 11,000 or 9,000, and then you'll get roughly, 5,500 or, 550. But then, as a stretch goal, to cover everything, if you hit 18 and 1636, then you get it. But I mean, the numbers won't match up precisely, but the footnote is there to indicate that those are stretch numbers. So, that's we acknowledge that it's over and above what the simple math from, what's in the roadmap itself based on the birth data and the, facilities data will tell you.
Can someone remind me, did we account for a percentage of not choosing to send their children to preschool? We did not, correct?
I believe we did not.
We
because it
were
was serving
accounting for
everyone.
every
Right.
child. Okay, that's why we call. Right.
And Bob, and incoming LG Luke's numbers do include that taken into account, yeah?
Correct.
What was the question again?
The comment was just that Lieutenant Governor elect Luke's numbers take into account the parent choice factor. So I think her projections.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
And just to clarify that, what Steve was mentioning, I think her thinking is that for the time being, at least, that you factor in 20% will choose, to keep their child at home or with them. But in the future, as that, as we get closer and hit, achieve serving everything up to the 20%, that there's the hope that, to make available more spaces and that people will, choose to do it. But at the time being, that 20% is going to be like the last non-takers or, the late takers. Yeah. So that's how she's thinking about it, at least right now.
It's a historical number, actually. If you go back to Act 259, that was exactly the same percentage at that point. And that's a good 15 years ago that we were looking at across the country, approximately 20% of families choose to have their children stay at home now. I don't know if that has changed, but that has been a historical number that people have used. So we may wish to include something about that in the report. We may still wish to account for trying to have seats for everybody. Now, Pooh, you have a look like you're not sure.
No, I'm in total agreement, and then
Okay.
I just went down a squirrel path and I thought of the FCILs, right?
Mhm.
Because they may technically be serving that 20%.
They could.
So how do they fit into SFA funds?
Yeah.
So if you look at the diagram that Lane has also shared, I think he was talking about, again, one of the guiding principles that we made sure to include was based on feedback. You know, we are trying not to supplant or take away from existing seats, but also to look at the mixed delivery system, so that we also wanted to include the family child interaction learning programs, and also, of course, the Hawaiian medium. So those are the pieces that we also need to be addressing. And I think, so again, so like you're saying, that may account for the 20%, but a parent choice, but I think we still need to be able to articulate that in the report. So that might be something we need to address.
And not all of those parents are going to choose FCIL,
Mhm.
which is either, or have access even to FCIL, right?
And I think Justina had a question earlier, and it looks like, I think Carrie also said something in
Yeah,
chat.
Carrie, Justina said she was holding off till we got through the report before she offered her comment. Carrie's comment, I think, Carrie, am I correct? Your comment was with regard to the blue sky numbers?
Sorry, I did put my name in chat in the comment again, so.
Sorry. I'm just trying to, I'm not trying to be exclusive, Justina.
It's okay, but I think it would make sense to chime in, because there was a couple of things related to numbers. I think this is such a good draft. It's going to really help us kind of guide how we do our work going forward and how we can be supportive as early learning board and really as a field. I think the ranges are actually good to have in there, and I do think maybe even Lane pulling them out in more of a table format, because it's very explainable why we have a bunch of, we can't agree on one number. We're pulling from a lot of sources and you're doing projections. And so having a range, I think for this kind of thing would be really acceptable. Another data source that maybe we could be shared, or I don't know, not to have too many cooks in the kitchen, but it kind of does check out with, we asked for a DOE data inquiry about projected preschool enrollment for all public pre-Ks and campuses. And so they did it based on their kindergarten enrollment. And the number kind of checks out, and it had like 12,300 every cohort. And so if you double that number, you're getting close to your range that you have there, Lane. So just kind of to say, as long as we have a sense of why we're stating the range, I actually think it's really viable to kind of map out to the low end, like a minimum range and then a maximum range, and we go for the more maximum part. I think my comment is a little bit, I think the question that we should be prepared for, and maybe we just address it in the roadmap, is what environments are we thinking will be, how much expansion could we expect from each of the environments if we can project, and maybe it's a low end projection and a high end projection. So I know we talk about Hawaiian language medium as a potential expansion site. We talk about some of the public pre-K. But if we're at all able to do some estimates around that, I do think it would be helpful. So here I see you have the estimated seats that are available, but what I'm kind of thinking would be complementary to this is do the projected. Maybe we don't even need to get as detailed, and some could be more clustered together, but a general sense of where are we expecting big expansion and where maybe isn't quite as ready to expand for the 3 and 4 year olds in the next period of time.
I think we have two possibilities of that data. One is EOEL 2021 projections, and the other is using the KS projections, which were based upon assuming the current percentage continues and utilizing that percentage as a possibility for expansion, given the number of students, but the percentage would be the same. Since we don't yet have data around, for example, the potential expansion in the private sector, even if there is any. And we don't really have data about the so-called deserts, if you will, that we can really rely on. What kind of resources are even out there that can be built and promoted? That was one of the reasons for the, it's called the market study, I think, recommendation in here, but I think it needs to be bigger than a market study around choice. It also needs to be a market study around what's currently available, which is what the Kauai study did, in getting that data. That we don't have that for all the islands yet. We have from the KS projections of available seats, but we don't have the choice information yet, I believe. Apple, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So this is really important feedback. So I think we'll go back and make sure that it's a little bit easier to understand through the table form. I like what you're saying, Justina, about the ranges there. And I think if you look at the recommendations, that's just in terms of the number of kids and seats that we're talking about. We also recognize that this is just an iterative document, so there'll be more information coming. I think at the time when we were writing this, we didn't have access to all of the different reports. So we know that we need to go back and make sure that we're in alignment. And again, if you look at the 4 areas that we're suggesting to really look at, there's conversations already happening about facilities, but I think that was the other area, as well as the workforce. And then really looking at the mixed delivery system and how we could include the different settings for children. And then also really being able to address the quality issues. So I think there's a lot to the document. Again, this was the first draft in terms of how we could get this across. And again, not to confuse what's happening with the potential, no, what is she now? Lieutenant Governor-elect
Yeah.
Luke's work with her, looking at the number of seats that we're talking about. So the facilities document there. So again, we don't want our roadmap to become a roadblock. So I think that's how we want to make sure that we're capturing the data that way. So if you have other recommendations on how we could phrase it out, because I think what you're saying, Justina, is it could be really, if this is a really helpful document, we just want to make sure that we're clear on how it's being presented and how it be reviewed. I think Carrie has a.
Yeah, Carrie, did you have a comment that we didn't get to yet?
Yeah, a couple things. One is, and Keiko and I were just talking about this, but I think, because the election's over now, and the candidates have seen the fiscal analysis and the estimates, it would be really helpful for UHERO and Blue Sky Consulting Group report to be crosswalked with these numbers. We're definitely all in the ballpark, but I think making sure that we've done that intentional touch point is really helpful. We also have workforce data in there, as well as some quality components and cost estimation. So that will be helpful. I also just want to speak to the 20%. I think it would be a big mistake for us to ever imagine that all 3 and 4-year-olds will be in center-based care. Kindergarten, we didn't have full participation in kindergarten until kindergarten was mandatory. And so families will continue to choose family childcare. They'll continue to choose FCIL programming, and they'll continue to choose having them at home. And so I think we should always be very realistic about that.
Carrie, are you saying we can have access to the Commit to KT report?
Yeah, I think what we should do is we should sit down with the committee. It's not going to be public. We have 30 pages or 40 pages or 50 pages of information. We're trying to make sure that we pull out the information that's most appropriate to the audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this one, I want to make sure that we're really thoughtful about what gets pulled out that can help inform and align the recommendations that go forward.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, because I have reviewed it and found it really helpful.
Good. Yeah, I think we can share now after past November 8th.
Justina,
Oh, no comment. It was just to clarify for notes. So I was putting in the numbers I was mentioning and the source of the DOE data office. in
thank
case that's helpful.
thank you. I'm going to be overly zealous, and when I see your name pop up now, since I cut you off before.
So Carrie, I did want to let you know that our next meeting as a subcommittee is going to be on the 21st of November. So, which is about 10 days, 11 days from now. So if you can connect with me and Bob and Keiko, what exact data you could have so we can have it available for that meeting. That
Okay.
would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm supposed to note that that Joel's numbers, so from Blue Sky Consulting Group, they came up with about a 32,000 range. So it's right in the middle of what you all are talking about, which is great. And then also to note that Head Start programs are licensed and therefore included in the patch count of private spaces. So that's also important when we're counting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. So these comments are really helpful in terms of the data, making sure that we have our data in alignment and we're including all that, because again, there's a lot of different conversations happening at the same time. So that'll be one of the pieces that we need to address. I just want to make sure if there's any other questions or comments, because if you look at the document, it's kind of high level policy recommendations, again, because the audience is to the legislators. So in the first part of the executive summary is really where you'll see some legislative recommendations. And then throughout the document, you'll see that there's been some conversations. I think the Executive Office on Early Learning and Department of Human Services went out and they did some focus groups. So there was some feedback from the providers at that time. But also if there's any other recommendations that you think that we're missing or think anything of concern that we need to be addressing. This is really helpful feedback. So I think we know we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, well, I'd like to also just bring to the surface that what we were trying to do, because of the charge in the concurrent resolution, was to address the infrastructure issues that are necessary for expansion to take place. And so we called out what we thought were the key infrastructure pieces, and that's what these grids have become in terms of the conversations that have been happening. I think particularly if we have missed things that we should be recommending that the legislature pursue or that we might suggest billing, we really need that information. So if somebody has additional suggestions, whether you have them right now or between now and the, Ben is going to invite people to do some input beyond this meeting today. Please be sure to share that with us so that we can have as much input as we can utilize for that November 21st meeting, so that by the time we come back at the December meeting, we're really ready to say, here it is, we want your approval. So if there's anything majorly missing that you see here, if there are any legislative pieces that we should be adding, if there any essential information we lack, we need to know what that is. I'm sorry, I kind of took over.
Thank you. I think that's what we needed to say. Ben, did you want to go over our next steps and how we're thinking of moving forward in terms of the timeline? Because again, we have a month, December 28th, to be able to get this into the legislature, but we want to make sure that the board has a chance to review and approve of what's going to be presented.
Yeah, thanks, Keiko. Yeah, so again, working our way backward, we need to submit this roadmap to the legislature by December. I think Lane, you said 28th, but I think we were looking at the 23rd as our kind of drop dead. So it gives time for formatting and all that kind of stuff. But really, we're looking, and we got to get it approved at the December 8th ELB meeting, which means we actually have 2 weeks, maybe less than 2 weeks because of the Thanksgiving holiday, but we have about 2 weeks to take all the feedback we get from all of you and then turn it around to Bob by December 2nd, I think. So Bob can get it out to board members for their final review in time for the December 8th Early Learning Board meeting. So with that said, as you guys had heard me mention earlier, our next subcommittee meeting is on the 21st of November. We're meeting in the morning. We want to ask if you have any feedback to please email, I would say myself, Bob, and Keiko. I'm going to add you to that as well, to any kind of feedback you guys have, any information, things we might have missed, any recommendations by the 17th close of business, which is next week, Thursday. So kind of quick turnaround, but that'll give us an opportunity to make sure we have the information to go over with the SI committee members. And if you need a draft to the public, we can make the draft available. I think we had 1 or 2 people that requested the draft, so we'll make sure we get the draft out to them, because we also want public input as well too. So we'll make sure we get that out. If you would like to see a draft to get some feedback to us, please let myself and Bob know. But we appreciate your feedback and input, and our goal is to get this as close as possible to allow us for some guidance as far as moving forward, right? That's the whole purpose of this roadmap, is to provide some guidance as far as what do we have to do to get to where we want to be.
All right.
Yes, thank you, Bob, to explain about the needs of the infrastructure, because that's something I wanted to hear. And then, because when I was looking at this document, the thing I was thinking about is, okay, how can the teacher production can catch up with this? And then this is just a seat number.
Right.
But these kids has to be taught by, 45 teachers. So that's the set, right? So is that matching up this number? The teachers actually produced the level or the rate that they are able to serve. And I don't know if you have number or not.
Right.
Just curious, because lots of people kind of quit or change the job, and then lots of people just want to stay and they work from home, and the preschool is not going to happen too. So I'm just curious. It's just a point.
No, that's a good point, Mari. I think it's kind of buried in the document itself, but maybe we need to pull it out in the chart form, because I think it's in one of the recommendations in really addressing the workforce, but it's kind of hard to see in terms of the data there. So that might be a good
Yeah,
recommendation.
so because I think they have grants or the stipends to produce more, but I don't know how fast it's coming up. Really growing people takes time. So when they have to finish line and then going out to the community, how fast, how many people are actually able to come out?
I think we're really sensitive to the workforce issue, and the RAND report is all part of what we need to really be able to take a look at and see what some of the suggestions are. But I also think we need to know that we have to look at this within a time frame. And even though we have the benchmarks to meet, we have to know that the expansion has time that allows for the growth of the workforce, but we need to look at, are there other needs in the workforce that need to be addressed in order for that growth to occur? And what kind of funding in particular is necessary? So some of these issues will be around compensation. We know currently that all providers are having challenges being able to secure staff and count on them being there. So there are some right now issues, even to be able to provide access to what currently is available. That is challenging. And that we tried to build into the report. Maybe we need to come back and see if we've made it as clear as we possibly could. We don't necessarily have the answers right now to all those questions, which is another reason we wanted to emphasize that this is an iterative process, because we have to figure out the answers to some of those questions in order for us to move forward. That's an exciting opportunity, but the challenges remain for the work to be done, which is why the report actually is set up the way it is. Not the challenges are highlighted not as barriers, but things that we need to keep in mind if we're going to achieve the outcomes being sought. So I think those are critical pieces to consider. Any other final comments before we tie this up or questions? All right, remember as you continue to read this every night before you go to bed to see what kinds of suggestions you want to make and recommendations. All right, if you need to sleep, that's something that may help with. Do take the time to continue to think about it and provide us with any input. We really don't want to hit the December meeting and somebody suddenly say, oh, but you left out such and such. This is an opportunity for that not to happen. And we really need to rely on you to give us feedback if necessary. Justina, you have a suggestion or did you put it in there?
Oh, I don't know if time is short, but I was just kind of looking at the exec summary and thought one of the things, Bob, you said would be helpful. You started to explain like how the 4 blocks of this work build up. So to add that really to the beginning and maybe graphics. I'm looking at Keiko. She's very good at those things.
Okay. Have you got a graphic in mind? We will take that into consideration, for sure. Thank you, Justina. Any other comments before we close down? I want to particularly thank Ben and Keiko for facilitating our conversations throughout this process. As Ben noted, the Strategic Implementation Subcommittee has worked overtime, and we really appreciate the amount of time that's been given. A lot of good thinking going into it, a lot of struggles. This has not been an easy process because we are also trying to intuit what was intended. But I think part of what it's doing is it's giving us as a board and the subcommittee an indication of how this can move forward and what we need to be considering. So hopefully the conversations are just beginning and we will continue them along the way with the expansion. So thank you, everyone, and particularly thank you to our 2 facilitators. We've appreciated it. All right, and thank you for the input from the group today. The next item on the agenda is the updates from the Executive Office on Early Learning. Yuko is not able to be with us, as those of you on the board know. She has had a medical leave at the moment. So Jordana is going to step in to share with you the information and to guide the staff in any sharing they're going to do. And she's asked that the proviso be to remember that she's reporting for Yuko and doesn't have all the answers. Is that right?
Correct. Thank you for that caveat. Okay, hi everyone. So I'll do the presentations on behalf of the office. So thank you, Alohi, for sharing the presentation. Could you do the next slide? So we'll start off with the EOEL updates for ELB that was sent out by Bob. The legislative update still stands. We're still awaiting the notification from the governor on his decision regarding our budget request. So we'll notify the board as soon as that decision is received. So hopefully next month we can share a bit more on that and some policy strategy in anticipation of the start of the ledge session. Just a reminder though that the Gov's last day is December 5th. So the new administration will be taking over after that. So we'll also update the board on any changes related to the change in administration as well. And then I believe Alohi has some updates.
Yes, hi everyone. I just wanted to share that I've been updating the group about the PDGB 5 annual convening this year, which will be virtual, is December 6th to the 8th. And registration is finally open. So if anybody is interested in attending, we can have as much people attending from Hawaii. And there's no limit or cap on that. But please let me know by email or in any way that's possible. Thank you. That's all I have.
Next, okay, perfect. Okay, does anyone have any questions about the document that was sent out? Okay, perfect. Next
I
slide.
don't see anything.
Next slide. So we'll move on to the preschool development grant birth through 5, the PDGB 5 renewal grant update. So throughout the month of October, representative members from the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Department of Human Services, the Early Learning Board, ELB, Hawaii P20, the Hawaii State Public Charter School Commission, and the University of Hawaii worked together to dialogue, define, research, and write and apply for the preschool development birth through 5 renewal grant. So this team had worked to envision the next steps for Hawaii in collaboration with other stakeholders. And during the final week, we were aided by grant editor Sherry Sadarananda. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. Who helped us pull each of the ideas together into a cohesive application, which was submitted Friday, November 4th. So we want to give a huge mahalo to Kim for organizing our efforts and the Hawaii P20 team of Jean, Anita, Tracy, and Marlene for their very meticulous oversight as we move through this process and for keeping us all together. And then this table on the screen shows some, not all of the grant inclusions, which align with the 4 main areas in an early childhood system. Does anyone have any questions about the PDGB 5 renewal grant?
Do we have any idea when we might hear?
Alohi, is it December?
We need to let awardees know by December 30th.
And do I recall that there are 24 that they're going to award this year? Or-
Yes, 24 of 25. 24 awards will be given out. There's 25 states that we're allowed to compete.
So one person doesn't get anything?
Possibly.
Oh. It doesn't sound very equitable. I'm wondering, this had a focus again, right? In terms of things that had to be included, so that it wasn't that we just decided ourselves.
Correct. There were 6 main areas, so things like quality, family engagement, workforce, and then there were some bonus areas like compensation, for example. So that, I think, was the foundational structure we used. But a lot of it was already in alignment with some of the work that we as a state were collectively already doing. But yes, there were 6 focal areas for the grant.
Can I just jump into, I want to just thank everybody who was involved. Our team at P20 worked really hard, but so did everyone who was in on this, Yuko, Jordana, sorry, all the folks at EOEL. It was a really good collaborative effort, so thank you for that. Carrie, I see your question there. I would prefer to wait to see if we get it before we share. That just feels like we'd be happy to come and share, like, either an executive summary or the actual application, but I'd prefer to just wait to see, make sure we get it.
Yeah, I guess the question, Steve, is why wait? I mean, I think it's helpful for everybody that's working in different spaces to know what the State Department folks and P20, so the public folks, are thinking and prioritizing, so that we can all be mindful and thoughtful as we move our work forward.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with sharing the application. I was more thinking of it from a Machi perspective. That's literally, I was thinking, like, let's just wait till we know whether we got it before we share it. But I don't really have a problem from a transparency perspective.
Happy to wait until we find out, but it would still be nice to see at least what was decided among the public partners.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes, next slide. Okay, and we are excited and happy to welcome Stephanie Tim Singh as our new contract specialist. She is doing an excellent job in charting our agreements, expectations, and checkpoints, and we are so grateful to have her on our team. This is a
Jordana, she's here.
She is here.
Jordana, she is
Yeah.
here. So can I just have her join?
Yeah.
Hi. Just wanted to say hello.
Sorry, Stephanie, hold on. Kevin, can you pin Chris's thing? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi. I just wanted to say I'm so happy to be here and part of this team. Look forward to meeting all of you.
Do you want to share something about your early childhood background so people have a sense of that, please?
I've worked in the early childhood education field for many, many years. I received my degrees here, then went to the East Coast and West Coast where I taught Montessori, came back here to direct preschools and also teach.
It's really exciting to have somebody with that background sitting in that seat. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then we'll pull up the slideshow again. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll share some updates from the National P3 Institute, where EOBL had participated alongside the Hawaii State Public Charter School Commission, Hawaiian Medium, and the Department of Education. Next slide, please. Okay, we learned from Executive Director Dr. Chrissy Cowers about common threads, which are held within and through the ECE and the pre-K-12 system. Dr. Chrissy Cowers is an Associate Clinical Professor at the University of Colorado Denver School of Education and Human Development. She specializes in education reform efforts that address a continuum of early learning from birth through third grade, integrating early care and education, system building, and pre-K through 12 reform. What slide number is it? Okay, so on the last day of the conference, each team presented their next steps in their journey towards increased alignment. And then, do you mind seeing if you can play the link that's at the top of that? Kevin, is she able to? Well, you also have to select the setting now to share your audio so that those on Zoom can hear you. Sorry, everyone, hold on for 1 second while we figure out some technical pieces. So we'll work on getting the audio, but as you can see, Namaka will be doing a short introduction for us.
Dana, I think you might need to stop share and then.
I'm not sharing.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
whoever is.
Right now, Kevin, our IT guy is helping Alohi right now to figure out the logistics. So apologies, everyone, just a few minutes.
We're ahead of schedule.
Oh. Okay.
We work with little children. We can be patient.
For adults.
It's so nice to see them. Okay.
Come on, you're.
Ho'olala ana I ka papaha.
Try see if you might make this. I don't know if you mute here. And you can hear.
Ana mai ka pepe a I ka puka. Mahalo. Aloha kākou, o wau o nā Maka Rollins. O Hawaii, ke kahua o ka ike na awao. O Hawaii ka aina, o e lua o lelo kuhelu. O ka olelo Hawaii, a me ka olelo Pelekania. O hana nui mākou, ke kime no Hawaii. I ka ho'olala ana I ka papahana. Mai ka pepe, a I ka pukakula ana. No leila, mahalo.
Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the three areas that are circled in yellow were identified as greatest impact for this type of systemic change. So these are the areas that the team had focused on. Next slide, please. Okay, and so the team arrived at three main focal areas. So each child will be developmentally nurtured P3 through quality interactions, which include playful learning. Each child will have an opportunity to participate in high quality pre-kindergarten, closing the achievement gap before the end of kindergarten, I think is what it says.
Grade 3.
And each child will have a caring, competent, grade 3, sorry. Each child will have a caring, competent, effective, and responsive teacher. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next few slides will show the team's thinking as they thought through what it would take to realize each outcome. The team is committed to continue meeting and working together to achieve greater P3 alignment. Board member, Dr. Rochelle Mahoy, attended the conference as a member from the Department of Education. So Dr. Mahoy, is there anything, additional insights or comments that you might want to provide?
No, thank you for allowing me to attend. I thought it was a great collaboration between the charter schools, the Hawaiian Medium, and EOEL. Um, it did, for me, it was a great professional learning too, to dive deeply into the P3 framework. So I think you're doing a great job presenting it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. So again, these, and then the next slide. These 3 slides show the focal areas that the team have developed. On the EOL updates that Bob had sent out, there is a link to this Google slide. So if anyone does want to review this in greater detail, it is located on the link on the EOL updates for ELB. So feel free to use that link to access these. Next slide, please. And then on the final day of the conference, Swati Adarkar, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and Early Learning for the U.S. Department of Education, spoke. And then next slide. And she set the context of their current work, which is opportunities to build on the department's broad and deep consensus, encouragement, and support, acknowledging the short runway and the necessity to focus and fast track, ensuring that strategies can become actionable using the department's existing tools, assets, and capabilities. And then especially in light of the impacts of the pandemic, bringing an equity lens in the work that we're doing. Next. And of course, she also highlighted kindergarten as an inflection point. And kindergarten being an opportunity to accelerate early learning, early school success, and equity. She also highlighted 2 commitments, with the first being a commitment to elevating a whole child approach. And then the second commitment focusing on transitions for children to include developmentally appropriated and differentiated practices in kindergarten. She also highlighted actionable strategies, which include harnessing resources, building on existing work, and sharing resources. Next slide. And then working in collaboration with Health and Human Services and a platform to share bright spots as a source of inspiration. Is that the last?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry, can I just add, one of the things that was kind of our team's takeaway was how do we align all of the policies, legislations, everything, right, to kind of clear the path so everybody's walking in the same direction. You know, it seems like with, you know, a lot of the legislations is kind of creating, they want action, but sometimes it doesn't, it creates barriers for implementation. So really, Yuko and I had a lot of discussions about how do we just clear the runway, right? If we want to fast track all these things, how can we as a board give the same message to everybody? And the diversity you guys talked about, we talked about just in this meeting, like 20% may choose to keep their kids at home. A lot of people choose private options, but how do we really like standardize some of the focal areas and messages, but yet people can customize it to their context, right? Even in, if they choose Hawaiian Medium, even, you know, a lot of the private sectors are 12-month. The public sector EOEL programs tend to be more like school, 9 months, right? But how do we, as I wondered about this board in our entity of making really a clear message. So I appreciate this roadmap that we just talked about earlier, so that we can have consistent messages regardless of the communities or the contexts and the spaces that we serve in. So thanks.
Thank you. So yeah, I think Yuko wanted to just share, lastly, that the National P3 convening was a great opportunity for the state educational entities to discuss the foundation of our education system in Hawaii, what's possible, and how we can take our next steps together. So thank you to Deanne Goya as well for being the lead of this effort and bringing all of these folks together to go through this opportunity. That's all I have.
All right, and I did gather that there would be ongoing connections among this group, correct? So we should be hearing more in the future.
Yes.
Okay. And Rochelle, with regard to what you were talking about, are you and Yuko going to pursue that? Or is that something the whole group is going to pursue?
I think, well, I mean, even this board, we talked about how can this board help? I mean, or even everybody in their own role group help. I mean, I think that was the commitment of the charter school, the Hawaiian medium, and that we would try and message out the same things. And how do we really clear the path for EOEL to really stand up 81 schools in the next year and the next 4 years? That's kind of a daunting task with a lot of funding for facility upgrades and all that kind of stuff. We're still negotiating how that funnels through even the state and the DOE and the funding sources. And I just feel like, how do we clear the path for this work? Like really, like get rid of barriers and everybody marching forward, you know, on the same path. But it seems clunky right now. So how do you have that clear roadmap and really like, so the execution and the implementation is much easier? Because, you know, with every legislations, right, there's gonna come some kind of carrot that, I mean, we just need to align all of the practices, all of the policies, all of the procedures, so it's quicker for us to expedite these things to happen. And so I think all of us, I think, have to have that same conversation of how do we just clear the path? Like, not put up roadblocks for this work to happen, because we all know it's important and needs to happen. So I was just working with her just within, because some of EOEL's money comes through the DOE. So we've kind of been talking to internally, how can we put her in contact with certain people so that the path is faster, you know, the movement is faster. But with everything else, that just needs to happen. Because it seems like policy and legislation dictates a lot.
Well, then perhaps it needs to be something that Yuko brings back to the board for conversation at some point. I'll follow up with her on some conversation around this.
Thank you.
Learn a little bit more. All right, thank you. And Jordana, thank you. Did you have anything else you want to add? Okay, thank you for stepping in at this meeting and stepping up as you did. Appreciate it. Any board member comments or questions for Jordana that she can answer? I don't see anything popping up in the chat, so let's move to item number 6, which is a series of subcommittee updates and reports, beginning with the governance standing subcommittee. And Matt, I'm going to ask you if you would lead us through that update.
Thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, everybody. The governance subcommittee met on October 28th. We discussed, had more discussions on the EOL director evaluation and the way forward for the Senate Resolution 34 on board governance. We did reach out to past reps and Senator Roy Takumi and Jill Tokuda to try to get some information. We did receive some, and we're going to be looking at some of the best practices for other public boards for size, etc. But we are having a special meeting. Here, let me put this in here in the chat.
I think it's the 14th.
In the chat, the governance subcommittee is having a special meeting on Monday, November 14th from 1 to 2:30. And we are going to be discussing how and what an action plan for the next year would look like to fully respond to the resolution. There's really not enough time to do it justice, and also to potentially propose legislation for this next session. So we're going to have to change how we write our response to the SCR 34. And through this action plan for what we'll do for the next year, we need other ELB board members' input. We'd love it if you could join us. If you can, please email me and we can send you the link to the Zoom meeting. Again, all we're going to do is kind of develop an action plan of things to consider. So composition, size, and is the board representative, and term limits. We have to kind of address those things, come up with a plan, and then Bob and I will be writing that up so we can present it to the board in the December meeting. Then we can turn that in as our legislative report, basically telling the legislature, thank you very much. And we will write another report in 2024 and propose legislation for potential changes to the ELB. And that's all I got. Any questions? Anybody want to volunteer to join? And I'll send you the link now for the special meeting.
If I can plug Matt's advertisement here. We have a number of new members on the subcommittee who really have not lived through the board experience, and it really would be helpful to have additionally in the conversation some of the board members who have been on the board for a few years, understand how it works, and have other issues. Carrie, I see you have your hand raised, so let's hear from you.
Yeah, Matt, if I can be helpful, I'm happy to contribute.
Okay, I'll send you the link. Thanks, Carrie. Also, the other thing to consider, it didn't happen on purpose, but due to attrition and changes in the board, the governance subcommittee, Bob is the only voting member that is on the board or on the subcommittee. The rest of us are the ex officio members, which is myself, Rochelle for DOE, Dana for DHS, and Yuko. So there are no other board members that would actually vote on things. So we're potentially not getting a good picture of what the board may want. So if you can join us, let me know. Thanks. And thanks, Carrie. I'll send that out to you now.
Matt, the invitation stays open beyond today, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's open. It's open until up through 1 p.m. on Monday, right before we meet.
Even 1:05, you can join us. We really do need some additional members. So if you can, please carve out some of the time, even if you can't be with us the entire time. It would be really appreciated. And actually, we need to consider additional members on the subcommittee itself, as well as helping to inform what this report is going to look like.
And Ka'iolani, thank you. Ka'iolani will be joining us.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
All
Thanks,
right.
Bob.
Anything else you wanted to add?
No, our next regular monthly meeting is Friday, November 18th. So next week is our regularly scheduled meeting. So we'll be discussing again the director evaluation. So thanks, Mom.
You have an opportunity to sandwich your week with governance subcommittee meetings if you like. Please do consider joining us. All right, thanks, Matt. Let's move to the Capacity and Resources Subcommittee. Erin and May.
Hello, everyone. It's Erin. I am the co-chair for the Capacity and Resources Subcommittee with May. And we just wanted to provide a kind of a general update at this point. We have been meeting pretty consistently. We meet every third Tuesday at 12. If anybody, I'm just going to put in my plug for our time while we're at it. So if you would like to join us, please let us know. We have had a pretty consistent and active committee. We do have quite a few community partners who are with us as well. And so we did spend, excuse me, the past meeting really discussing what the vision for this committee would be for the next at least year or so. And we really do want to continue to work to support the EOEL in its coordination of the system that is outside of the public pre-K. Oops, sorry, that's my reminder for a cup of coffee in the afternoon. I'll go get that later. So we did want to share with you our most recent discussion, and it's really just around kind of the feeling or the sense that we do know and recognize that EOL is doing a lot of work outside of the public pre-K system. And we would really just want to learn more about what that work is so that we can then identify any gap areas that may exist in capacity and resources going forward. And so for that reason, we did want to kind of let everyone know that we will be, our recommendation really is for the Early Learning Board to become more to gain more knowledge into what the EOEL is currently doing. So we are still working with EOEL in particular to determine like the mechanism of which ELB will be updated in the efforts. But we did just want to give you guys the heads up that that really is our focus area this coming year, to uncover, lift up, and support the work that's currently happening so that our committee can then work to identify any gap areas that we can address. So May, did you want to add anything or did I miss anything in our update to the board?
You said it beautifully. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any questions for us at this time? Okay. So we really do want to work closely with EOEL so that we don't, create more of a burden on them for this request. But we do hope that the more the Early Learning Board is once again up to speed with what's happening, that will be better suited to support the work that they're doing. That's all.
Thank you, Erin and May. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to hearing how this recommendation gets followed through by EOEL. Okay, the next report is the Workforce Equity Subcommittee. This is both an update and information and also has some action to be taken. So Justina, would you lead us through that conversation, please?
Great, thank you. So we have 2 items, and I had sent in the materials that you received from Bob some background information that's in a memo. The first piece is actually a recommended action. So following up on our meeting last time, as a full early learning board, Bob had presented the priority policy framework. So kind of what we would look at supporting, and sometimes there's not enough time in between. So it's like writing testimony based on these key priorities and framework for the upcoming ledge session and beyond, because there'll be other policy considerations. So when our workforce equity subcommittee met last, we took a look at those, particularly the section that was a state plan building block 4 around workforce. And we made some additional recommendations about what that policy framework should look like. So 2 important changes is actually it builds out 2 additional bullet points instead of the original of kind of things that were a little more truncated to 2. And adds, it sort of elevates the compensation piece for our workforce as one separate issue area to really have an eye on as a policy priority. And it gives some clear definitions or examples of what kinds of policies that might entail. Things like wage supplementation, because that's been on the table. Also looking at things like salary schedule and pay parity. So we wanted to call that out as its own bullet, even though it had been in one of the examples previously. And then the second was we did notice that there wasn't enough consideration, and we wanted to really make sure it stood out on its own for some of the unique considerations about how do we support the workforce for recruiting and retaining our specific Hawaiian language medium workforce, because there's particular pathways and standards that they're meeting in order to serve in those programs. So again, that became its own bullet point. So I wanted to give a chance for you guys to review. Hopefully you had a chance to review it ahead of this meeting. And then what we're asking is that we would, I guess we'll put a motion on the table and then we open up to discussion, I think is usually how we do it. So the motion would be to basically adopt the 4 bullet points under building block 4 for workforce, and it would replace the current language of the framework of policy priorities as it reads now. So hopefully that was clear enough as a motion. And can I get someone to second it, Bob? Or is that how you want to do it for this one?
We need to have a second. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second. This is Kaiulani.
Thanks, Kaiulani. And then we can open it up for discussion. Jordana, I do this to you guys all the time, Justina, excuse me. Are you able to share your screen and show the actual building block 4?
Yes. Let me just get it up. Okay, so I'm pull up directly from the, this is from the memo that I shared. So let's just start with the current language, and it's right here if you can see my cursor moving. This is the current language for building block 4 with 2 bullet points. And what what our subcommittee is suggesting is in the inclusion basically of these last 2 bullet points. And then we did clean up some of the examples that were listed after each of these 4 bullets.
Now, essentially, you are retaining the first 2 bullets, elaborating on the examples in those, and adding 2 more. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so you have that information in front of you. Is there any discussion?
Bob, I just have a quick question, or Justine, a quick question. And I'm sorry, I know I ask this question all the time, but can you remind me on the scope of this recommended action? Is it just for childcare and preschool? Or are we talking workforce? Does that also include early intervention, home visiting?
The intention when I wrote it was broader than just preschool.
Okay.
And I don't think there was any questioning of that, Justina, in the subcommittee, correct?
No, it wasn't a discussion we had. It's kind of went with the assumption of the framework for the policy priorities, which did broadly capture our our charge and our mission statement as the early learning board.
And remember that the purpose of this framework of priorities is so that we can respond to legislation pretty expeditiously. And so they're kept fairly generalized. The examples are just possibilities that might pop up to elaborate a bit on what these bullets might mean.
Great, because Justine, as I'm thinking about like early childhood mental health consultants and Aaron pinging you too, I'm glad that it still falls under this area. Okay.
Well, I've also added, you recall, I mean, if you had a chance to look at what I sent out to everyone, revisions were made in building block 1 to allow for some of that as well. Okay. Any questions for Justina or comments with regard to this change? If not, we can move ahead to actually vote. Anything in the chat, Justina? I don't see anything. Nope. All right, seeing nothing, let's move to vote on this particular segment. Can we keep them up front so people can see them while they're voting?
Oh, yep. Will do. Up here.
Okay. All right. It seems redundant, but Justina?
Aye, that was an easy vote.
Yeah. Erin?
Aye.
Eleni?
Aye.
Megan is absent. Ben? Oh, Ben had to leave. May?
Aye.
I vote aye. Napua?
Aye.
Ari?
Aye.
Carrie?
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Thank you. The recommendation has been approved to revise building block 4, the language that in the first 2 bullets and the addition of the second. So thank you, Justina, and your subcommittee. You had more though that you wanted to talk about today, correct?
Yep, that's right. And I will actually keep sharing just for ease, although maybe folks have this up in front of them, so hopefully it's not too redundant. Basically, our next item is a previewing of something we want to bring to the December meeting as time allows, as Bob sets the agenda. A little bit of background on this piece is that we're actually looking to have the Early Learning Board potentially adopt policy, set by our Early Learning Board as it relates to kind of some guiding principles around how we support our workforce, both kind of in its recruitment, retainment, standards. And we think now is kind of a good time to look at this because of the attention that is on our early childhood workforce right now. And also its need to grow, as we were just talking earlier today with the roadmap, highlighting some of those big growth areas, not just by classroom numbers, but we're also talking about teachers, we're talking about support staff, we're talking about aides and many other things. So in that work, our subcommittee, when we met last, we wanted to basically preview in this meeting, and we're not taking any action, but we would come back to the board in December with a few recommendations of 3 to 5 policies that we would recommend our full Early Learning Board to adopt around how we're supportive of our early childhood workforce in Hawaii. And we're building and drawing from the work that's been done across the country from the Power of the Professions, a unifying framework for early childhood education. We've looked at this as a board, but it's been a while. I think it was a little over a year ago when we had Dr. Terry Locke present a little bit about the unifying foundations, maybe even a little longer than that possibly. And she shared with us some of the educator levels of 1, 2, and 3. And so since it's been a while, what we did do is we linked to the full recommendation report of the unifying framework for the early childhood educator profession. And I highlighted a couple of sections where we're looking to kind of hone in on which of those principles we'd lift up and ask the full ELB for support and adopt that as policy. So in that vein, Dr. Terry Locke has graciously agreed to share a few slides and go over some of the key areas of the unifying framework that will be most kind of connected to the conversation that we'll have in December. So, and with that, all to say, we're kind of priming the pump, right? So if you do get a chance to look at the full report, it would be great. And if not, then really drawing your attention to 2 sections. There's been a lot of work and thought into the way that it's framed out and supporting the profession. They take into consideration things like people's pathways into the profession and their prior education, or maybe they're coming in with not a lot of prior education. There's a lot of consideration for how do we sustain the current workforce we have. And so those are a lot of the reasons I like what's in the framework. And I think our subcommittee liked what's in the framework as maybe a basis for what we would introduce in December. And with that, Terry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I believe you just had a handful of slides to share as priming us for next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Justina. So let me share, as Justina mentioned, we talked about power to the profession some time ago, but I think there's also been new members. So let me share with you. So power to the profession was a national movement. It started off really a number of years ago from NAYC's policy guides to state early childhood professional development systems. And it was just guides, the blueprints that could be used by various states. And in fact, the original workforce designs blueprint was actually what helped to shape some of the organization in Hawaii Careers with Young Children. And then after that, more recently, after that, a national report called Transforming the Workforce of for Children Birth through 8, states also asked for another tool, which was Build It Better, indicators of progress to support integrated early childhood professional development systems. So there was a change. So you notice the word integrated. So it really means serving all children and from birth through 8. So this particular document is a policy guide that really looks at how to move forward the whole professional development workforce system. And so that's something, I want to bring your attention to. We'll have that, we'll probably talk about that more as it could guide our work here in our state. So from that came Power to the Profession. Power to the Profession Unifying Framework is really focused on the vision each and every child beginning at birth has the opportunity to benefit from high quality early childhood education delivered by an effective, diverse, well-prepared, and well-compensated workforce. And it started in 2016 and then began to, it involved 15 national organizations and about 36 other national collaborations, 11,000 educators over a period of 4 years, and came out right before COVID, before shutdown in COVID. So, but it went through about 8 decision cycles that the field was able to participate in and engage in. From that, we looked at the whole field of early childhood. So you can see all the circles. And there are other roles too, really focus on the whole field. The 3 top areas focus on the first edition of the Unified Framework. So that means there'll be further editions. And this really looked at early childhood educators, the professional preparation faculty and trainers, like in higher education, and pedagogical and instructional administrators, oftentimes coaches and administrators as well. Okay, and then so in the three designations of early childhood educators were early childhood educator 1, which is entry level, 120 hours of training, educator 2, associate degree, and the educator 3. And so you can see it, and I would say that early ECE 1 and 2 is what we're covering in our community colleges, and then the bachelor or master is at the university level. Okay, and so what I want to show you now is just some examples of some of the things that states have been doing to advance this type of alignment with the standards and competencies. So there are now these professional standards and competencies. It's in 6 standards, and states are beginning to adopt them. In Nevada, their registry, workforce registry, is adopting those standards. In Pennsylvania, they're also using the standards to look at their registered apprenticeship programs, having these 3 tracks. Wyoming, they're looking at different ways of aligning, again, these standards to their work. And Alabama as well, that's also going into their PDG grant funding. In Hawaii, we've been begun to, through the ECE3 project, have begun to really look at how these standards, let me just back up a little, how the standards actually can be aligned in our higher education programs. So we've adopted the standards, we're aligning those, we're looking at how to use that for articulation agreements and helping our students transfer from one program to the next. And also making sure our faculty are qualified to teach using these particular standards. So that's the alignment work that's going on. I also want to say through HCYC that our E Malama Inakeki, which was our core competencies that was unique to Hawaii, and looking at really all 4 settings: center-based, family child care, family interaction learning program, family child interaction learning program, home visiting. That was, we already had a set of state standards, and now we're just updating those standards to align with these national standards. So that's the work that's going on now. So, and yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share about Power to the Profession. I think one of the things that we want to focus on is when we think about every profession, that we want to move towards, clear career pathways, alternative career pathways, standards, competencies, compensation are all the things that kind of get wrapped up into a profession. And so that's what this particular unifying framework does. It helps guide the states in moving forward. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And let me see if I can get out of here. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
So,
oh,
yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Terry, for giving us the preview. And then I did just want to kind of, I'll share my screen one more time to just show, this is in the document, but kind of a few of the things that maybe we'll be looking at in the December meeting. Now I don't have the button where to share my screen. There it is. Okay. So our goal, our subcommittee does need to meet again. That's why it's not that we have, say, the 3 to 5 recommendations we would prepare to share in December. But I wanted to share like some of the things that could, kind of come up. We don't want to have it be too many things, but things that are really pertinent to, especially the conversations that are happening right now about related to some of the legislation that has been passed and is working on being implemented. But some of these things are things that both federal government or states can do. And actually, I wanted to show you the state section. Sorry, scrolling down. Okay, we'll give you an example here. But basically looking at things like, we would support the necessary financing that addresses the true cost of providing the adequate level of learning and also for our compensation for the workforce. So that might be something that kind of comes up. And we would look at those kind of going hand in hand, right? So recruiting our workforce or having the highest, having great standards for who is in our workforce, that would go hand in hand for sort of pushing for or promoting the things like higher levels of compensation or pay parity with our K-12 educators. So hopefully that gives you enough of a preview so it doesn't feel like it comes out of the blue in December. And if we have a few minutes, we're happy to take questions and for either myself or for Terry.
Justina, one question I have is, will you, as you did with this one, will you be sending out in advance of the meeting the policy proposals you wish the group to vote up?
I do think it's good practice to do it. I'm definitely someone who prefers to read something in a memo ahead of time, so I'll commit to doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, subcommittee, but we're gonna send something out ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah, just one more thing, Justine, I forgot to mention while I was speaking that I think most of you are aware that the RAND study did get completed. A final report came out on October 25th. And then we also have, you can find it on our ECE3 project website, as well as on the RAND website. And so when you go to it, I think I'm having Gabe kind of put in the links so you can find them, and you will be able to also find some shorter. The report itself is like 125 pages, but there are briefs, and we have a 4-pager, a 1-pager, and soon we'll have a FAQ. So it'll help all of us really understand what's in the report. And then I've created a task force that is really looking at the report, at the RAND report, all the data, and the beginning to learn lessons from other states to build our Hawaii plan.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions or comments for Justina and/or Terry?
Or also, or also if, are there any things that you read either in the framework or considerations that you'd like us to take back to the subcommittee in developing the policies that we bring forward? Like top of mind, what would be important for you to see in those top 3 or 5?
I don't think anyone is ready to do that yet. Probably need a bit more time to be thinking about them and looking into them. But one of the things we want to keep in mind is that we're on a big expansion mode, and we're going to need a lot of people. And we really want to look at the kinds of capacities and competencies that are going to be best for our young children as we move forward. So considering what some of these might be becomes really important at this moment. So any input people could give, they could submit to you, Justina, I assume, and could be shared with the committee.
Absolutely. Thanks for that comment, Bob.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you both. We will look forward to hearing more at the December meeting or prior to the natural. All right, the next item on the agenda is the leadership update, and I simply wanted to bring to your attention that we had some additions to make to the draft framework of policy priorities suggested at the last meeting, not the ones that we just added to building block 4, but I sent this draft framework of policy priorities out to you in a document. The 2 that we've added are to building block 1. One is to support the prevention and intervention of child abuse and neglect, intimate partner violence, and substance use. And the second is to focus on prenatal needs and issues in support of the continuum of the early childhood spectrum. Now that 4th bullet could probably fit in a number of other categories if we chose to, but I think having it at least in one of our categories is significant. Carrie and Aaron, I believe you were the 2 who suggested we add these. Are you okay with those additions as they are, or do they need any revision? Aaron?
Sorry, I think I only caught a portion of what you said. Would you mind repeating?
Okay, yeah. I was asking if the addition, which was focused on prenatal needs and issues in support of the continuum of the early childhood spectrum, is that the way you wish to do it? Okay.
Thank
you. That will be included when we do the vote at the next meeting. And then Carrie, are you okay with the way the language is on the prevention and intervention?
I am. Thank you for the inclusion.
Okay. So at the December meeting, we will have the revisions in block 4 to add, and we will make a final approval of this draft framework of policy priorities. There was one other addition, Kaitani, you had asked that the board in its consideration of supporting legislation take into consideration the potential impact on Hawaiian immersions, Hawaiian medium environments. I was going to leave that as a guiding consideration. Is that sufficient for what you were suggesting?
I believe so. I think similar to what we just included in building block 4, it's just acknowledging that special and unique considerations might need to be had for Hawaiian medium environments. And I think that goes for any, priority or policy priority that we might have. So yes.
Okay, so I will add that as a guideline for consideration, and that will be part of the complete document that we will vote on at the next meeting.
Mahalo.
You're welcome. That's all I have for the leadership update at this point. So we're at the section in the meeting where there's another opportunity for public comment. Is there any public comment to share? Hearing none, we'll move on to member updates. Mari.
Yes, my term is going to end next June. And then I brought the fresh face today. This is Dr. Lindsay Hiscock. And then she is our actually future for the pediatrics. She's a very good physician. She was a chief in the training and then trained the younger doctors already. And then she is actually in the teaching position right now. And then doing the clinical work. She herself has own little ones. So this is very close to her heart, right? And then she's starting to kind of follow me around. I'm going to be her backup. And then I'm hoping that we can work together. I kind of put her in. So, she may not be able to have the chance to say no when that comes. But do you want to say something?
Thanks for letting me come today. It's been really interesting. Looking forward to listening to you all.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And you haven't left the room, so we're thinking optimistically. Thanks, Mari. Any other member updates?
Bob, this is Carrie. I just, as I was thinking about the makeup of the board, right, which is a big conversation we're going to be having in the coming weeks, when we're looking at standards, when we're looking at workforce, all of these really critical systems priorities. I want us to not forget our Keiki birth to 3 with special needs. I feel like because early intervention was not considered or identified as a setting, which is, has always been a funny thing for me because home visiting is a program similar to EIS, which is also home-based. I often feel like it gets left off when we are communicating and planning and getting things on paper. So just a reminder for all of us to not forget birth to 3, Keiki with special needs and their families.
Is there anything in particular you think that we should be doing that we're not?
I'm sure I should, not particularly right now, but I will make sure to chime in on specific conversations and decisions.
Okay.
I think we oftentimes, right, will jump to sped preschool, 3 to 5. Like we clearly see that as in our purview, but we don't always, sometimes we forget birth to 3.
Maybe it would be a good idea sometime after the first of the year for you to get some time on the agenda to really make sure we're educated sufficiently about the sector. That might be helpful. Okay,
Can I
Great.
make a comment on that?
yeah,
I think part of the reason that was not kind of tend to be forgotten is early intervention was probably considered as a therapy
Hmm,
or the treatment rather than the education per se.
okay,
But I have to share that, whatever the way that we want to teach them to do certain tasks and when they are learning, when the kid has a disabilities or delays, that we also work on the kids who is typically developing most of the time. So, I think that was the reason, oftentimes it was supposed the medical side or treatment side rather than the early education side. So I think early intervention people may want to kind of make sure that is also included in the activities because we have special teacher and a special instructor in the group.
Thank you, Mari. Yeah, and I think too, in these conversations we've been having with early childhood mental health and referral processes and, early intervention is really critical for those conversations and they're leading a lot of the work. And so they're just they serve a small number, but they're really critical for the system. And so I just want to make sure that we're putting that hat on when we look at these different components.
that's your job on the board, so good. Thank you. Any other member updates? Erin?
Hello again. I think I would like to echo what Carrie's sharing there about home visiting, which is why I was going to send you guys some reports just to disseminate some more information about home visiting in particular. And I'm going to be dropping into the chat box two reports. One is the McVie needs assessment. This has been out since 2020, but I did just want to kind of bring it up, especially as we're talking about data and information, so that you guys can become more familiar with how the home visiting program, I guess, is designed to support those specific areas. And then also the annual report from the home visiting services unit recently completed and is available for distribution. So I'm gonna just put those in here now. And if you have any questions, you can, well, I'm not the person who wrote them, but you can let me know and I can either connect you to Jeremy, who is the unit supervisor there, or perhaps maybe answer some questions as well. And perhaps we can consider if we would like to highlight some of our other settings in the early learning board meetings in the future. I think home visiting would be more than happy to share what they're up to as well with the board.
Thank you.
That's all.
Also, if people need to connect with home visiting, folks can reach out to me also, since home visiting falls in the Family Health Services Division, our maternal child health branch. Thanks.
Yes. Sorry, Matt. I thought that you had left the meeting for some reason.
Justina, you have an update.
Yep, I have two updates. One is Save the Date longer term out, which is as a partnership with Department of Health and many others, including Hawaii Association of Independent Schools and HCF. We've been able to secure doing another Kahavai Summit next year, which is trauma-informed and early childhood mental health informed sessions for any practitioners in the field of early childhood. It will be virtual over 2 days. So mark the dates on your calendar. It's April 20th and 21st for next year. And then my second update is more immediate and close, which is if you know of any early childhood programs or you're in an early childhood program and you would be interested in having the research-based Ready for K text messages go out to your families, then get in touch with me. Hawaii Community Foundation sponsors a number of our early childhood programs. So the cost of them is free. We cover the cost so that they can be enrolled in the research-based messages that go out. And they're really great messages. They're very strengths-based. They kind of tell parents you can do it, and they're aligned with our protective factors. So again, a really nice way to enhance your program. I'll pop in more information about the actual service, but if anyone's actually interested, get in touch with me in the next week, because that's kind of when I'm going to finalize our enrollment potential numbers. It just has to be potential numbers with Ready for K by next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member updates? I don't see any more. Carolina, did I miss anything? Okay. All right, this has been a full meeting. Let's see if I can summarize the meeting outcomes. The major conversation at the beginning of the meeting around the roadmap provided opportunities for input and recommendations from board members. Generally, the conversation revolved around the data in particular, aligning the data that we're using, and also investigating other data that's available, including the commit to Keiki, with a connection through the Strategic Implementation Subcommittee with the commit to Keiki and UHERO report. Ben indicated that feedback can be provided through November 17th, since the next subcommittee meeting is November 21st. So you are all invited to have any additions to the roadmap or other suggestions to submit them to Ben by November 17th. We approved the addition of, excuse me, the addition of 2 priorities in building block 4 of our framework of policy priorities related to the workforce. And we'll bring back to the full board at the December meeting a completed list of the framework of policy priorities to inform our legislative action this coming year for approval. Also at the December meeting, there will be a recommendation of policies regarding the early childhood workforce coming from the Workforce Equity Subcommittee. Watch for information to arrive before then. With regard to other outcomes of this meeting, we were made aware that the PGB5 grant renewal has submitted in November, and there should be a response in December. And at that time, if the grant is approved, it will be shared more broadly. The governance subcommittee is holding a special meeting on November 14th from 1 to 2:30 to address SCR 34. It's looking for additional board member input. Some people have stood up already, but others are invited if they choose to be a part of that. Those are the items I'm sorry. And then 2 future items to keep in mind is educational opportunities around early intervention, particularly with a focus on 0 to 3, as well as home visiting. Those are the meeting outcomes that I took away. Anyone have any outcome to add that we missed? All right, then Carrie, do you have some good words to send us away with?
Sure. So in the season of gratitude, I chose a quote from Alice Walker, and it reads, "Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say." I say that one a lot. Thank you expresses extreme gratitude, humility, and understanding. So just mahalo to everyone who put so much time and effort and passion and heart and skill into improving our systems of care for our youngest Keiki. Have a wonderful holiday. We'll see you next month.
All I can say is thank you. Aloha, everyone.